Hi everyone. In today's presentation, we'll be talking about why many teens turn to substances instead of therapy. And this is by Kayleen Yu and Fiora Chung. We'll start by taking a look at the table of contents. So first we'll begin with introduction and a background, look at current statistics and trends, then examine factors that drive substance use over therapy, the consequences and what solutions and policies exist. And then we'll close with takeaways on what we can do next. So let's take a look at some data here. So if we take a look at the substance abuse trends, by eighth grade, about 15.1% have tried illicit drugs at least once. And by 12th grade, that rises to 26.8%, which is more than one in four seniors. And in 2023, 5,926 Americans aged 15 to 24 died from drug overdoses. And if you look at the chart on the right, you can see that overdose death among 15 to 24-year-olds over time. And the darker line shows the all overdose death with separate lines for opioids, cocaine, and heroin. And you can also notice the sharp rise during the late 2010s and around 2020. While there has been some drop in substance use during these times, the overall trend reveals that it increases drastically. And also let's take a look at the alcohol abuse trend. By eighth grade, 18.5% have abused alcohol at least once. By 12th grade, 8.8% report consuming five or more drinks in a row when drinking, which is a binging behavior. And in 2023, about 757,000 adolescents around age 12 to 17 met criteria for alcohol use disorder, which is a very young age to meet that disorder criteria. Now let's talk about co-occurrence disorder. So co-occurrence disorder is when a person has a both mental health disorder and substance use disorder. So nearly half of Americans, which is 48%, experience either a mental health or a substance use disorder at some point. And over half of those include both, which is what co-occurrence disorder is. So people with depression, anxiety, or PTSD are twice as likely to have a substance use disorder. And the reverse is true as well. So there's like a really high correlation here. Mental health disorders increase vulnerability to substance use, and then substance actually also worsen the psychiatric symptoms and make recovery even harder. So this is like a two-way relationship where one worsens another and vice versa. And despite how common co-occurrence disorder is, it is still very under-researched and undertreated. So many teenagers get help from one condition, but not both, which also weakens outcome for both treatments. Now let's talk about real rates of therapy utilization. So this is the gap that's shown here. So among teens that who clearly needs substance use treatment, only about 7% really receive any help. And this chart really shows anxiety and depression report rates by sex and LGBT plus identity. So looking generally, all adolescents, around like 21.2% report anxiety symptoms and 17.4% report depression. And you can also see here that females report higher rates than males by a lot. And then LGBT plus youth report the highest levels, but they still face major barriers. And then you can also see that by overall data, people really don't report their mental health symptoms as 21.2% and 17.4% is alarmingly low. Now let's talk about the purpose. Why are we talking about substance use disorder and why does it matter? So our goal is to explore the root causes of high teen substance use and how it relates to limited therapy utilization. We will also identify barriers to mental health care and promote healthier coping strategies. And why does this issue matters? Teen years are critical for identity and brain development, and substance use can disrupt health and growth. And that's why we're so focusing on how substance use impacts teenagers as they're very vulnerable. And understanding these drivers can help prevent downstream consequences like addiction, depression, academic decline, like school dropouts, and like bunch of relationship strain, like family relationships and peers. And then through this presentation, we aim to educate peers, families, and communities that are suffering with risks of substance use. And we want to reduce stigma and encourage very earlier intervention to this very problem. Now let's delve deeper into a psychology lesson of adolescence. So we'll be talking more about like a neurological aspect of adolescents and what makes them so vulnerable to substance use. So the prefrontal cortex is for decision making, reasoning, and impulse control. And it doesn't actually fully mature until the mid-20s. So essentially, decision making process is basically very underdeveloped in adolescence, and it is in the process of developing compared to an actual adult. So they are in more risks of making impulsive decisions. The limbic system, which processes emotions and rewards, is highly active during adolescence. So we are more likely to have heightened emotions and react and behave upon those emotions. And we also crave for rewards, which is essentially what substance use make us feel like very rewarding. And this means that teenagers are more susceptible to risky behaviors because reward systems basically outspaces the rational control system. Adolescents also highly prioritize social acceptance, which makes them also very vulnerable to peer pressures and social comparison. Additionally, dopamine responses are also heightened, so rewards feel stronger. That's one reason why alcohol or drugs can feel especially reinforcing, and it also raises addiction risk. Now let's talk more about the modern policies and what they're trying to do to address substance use. First, let's talk about Free Mind campaign. This is a national effort offering youth and caregivers resources on mental health, substance use, and their connection. This campaign also encourages early conversations to prevent crisis, particularly around fentanyl and rising teenager depressions and suicidal rate. Next, we'll talk about Safe Schools Healthy Students SSHS initiative. This is a federal grant program integrating drug prevention, mental health services, and school safety. This initiative evaluates how districts implement programs and what changes they can adopt. And lastly, we'll talk about the National Youth Anti-Drug Media Campaign. This is ran by ONDCP with Drug Free America. It uses paid media such as TV or digital to discourage youth drug use. So now let's talk about factors that drive substance use. So these are the barriers to treatment, which is cost and insurance gaps can make therapy like very out of reach for many adolescents. And there is a stigma, which is a fear of being labeled as weak or broken. This is very stereotypical view towards um therapy. And there are also people who doesn't know where to access these programs. They don't know where to start, who to call, or what's covered. And there's also vulnerability of opening up. Many teenagers feel ashamed or embarrassed to share about their mental health tools, such as depression and anxiety. They believe that they should handle it alone or worry about like burdening others, which and substance can feel private, which but also therapy feels very like exposed to other, and it is very slow. And that is why people crave substance over therapy. And another is peer pressure. Peers heavily like shape behavior, such as group norms can like normalize like alcohol and substance use and marijuana, etc. And peer groups provide access, information, and approval through all of these substance use, which can validate the usage of those drugs. Together, these factors can make substances feel really like faster and easier. These are three more factors that I'll talk about. So first is family influence. So teenagers with parents or siblings that has substance usage face higher risk due to genetics and behavior of like a model by seeing their parents as a model and then following what they do. And family stress, conflict, or neglect can push teens towards coping through substances. And there's also early access to substance. Nearly half of teenagers say getting marijuana is fairly and very easy, often through friends or home supply. And then there's also low perceived risk, and combine that with easy access, there's more continuous, consistent usage of substances. This is also related to stress, anxiety, and trauma. People who experience abuse, neglect, grief, and chronic stress can like experience elevated risk of substance and alcohol use. Substances can become a coping tool for the difficult emotions, and then they help relieve them. but then they face consequences later. But in the immediate moment, they feel the relief, and individuals crave that.
Hi, I'm Fiore, and I'm going to be doing the rest of the slideshow. So first, we're going to be talking about consequences, and I'm going to be going over the short-term consequences, long-term, and then other consequences, like for other people that your situation may be affecting. So for short-term consequences, these are just a few of, I guess, the side effects of drugs. Substances may cause altered depth perception, raise or lower blood pressure, blurry vision, etc. And for these short-term consequences, I really wanted to emphasize like the way your body will react in the short term specifically, because people will think that I think there is a concept that when you use substances that it won't really affect your body as much. It's more of like it'll like alter your brain and your mental, like what you see, things like that. So I really wanted to focus on like how it actually changes your physical health. And then there's more than that, obviously, depending on which substances you're using. Next, I wanted to talk about the long-term consequences, and these do not only range from social relationships or just family, things like that, because in the long term, there's so much more that just using substances can affect. So first, there's academic difficulties, whether this is just declining grades or just struggling more in school than you used to, then that can obviously affect your grades, your school, your mental health. It all relates. Then we have poor relationships, physical health issues. Now, these are also different from short-term issues because while these may occur for, let's say, like 10 minutes and your blurry vision stops, long term, there could be risk of death by overdose, suicide, or even just illness overall. And then lastly, we have mental health issues, including depression, developmental lags, and personality disorder. And all of these long-term issues aren't just confined to one thing. So it's really important to think about what you're doing and then how you can help yourself in the long term. And then lastly, we have for other people, because being in this difficult situation does not only affect you, it affects other people as well. So first we have family crisis, because when you're in a difficult situation alone, it may feel like you're alone, but in reality, there's other people that are there to support you, and there's other people that care about you. And when you're in a situation like this, your family might be secretly or not secretly very stressed, and it could lead to a lot of burnout, a lot of things happening in your home. And then we have economic consequences to supporting, whether it's therapy or just needing to go to the hospital, just random expensive that can obviously build up. And even just trying to support a teen in general is very expensive. And then lastly, or second to last, we have peer relationships and then mental health issues. So all of these things go hand in hand. And in reality, it's not just one or the other. It can be everything at once or all of these at like different times, but there are many consequences, so it's important to think before you act and if this is the best way that you should be coping. So after this, we have some examples because a lot of that was a lot of words and a lot of talking. Um, let's say someone is using opioids. Short term, there can be relaxation, indifference to emotional or physical pain, drowsiness, constipation, and slow breathing. And while some of these things may sound positive, in the end, it's really not because we can see the long-term effects here. First, they're highly addictive, and as the body builds up tolerance for the drug, more is needed to maintain the desired feeling. So not only are you addicted to this drug, but you need more and more amounts of it that in the end is you can't really stop and it's just getting harder and harder, which is why withdrawals can be long and physically painful. It's not just that mentally you're dependent on the drug, but physically it can hurt your body as well. So there's many ways that these drugs are altering the way you live. And um yeah, there's a story. Danny Davis, this is a real person, 19 years old, said the drug ketamine was destroying his body, but he did not realize he needed help until he saw the story of another man who had turned his life around. So basically, Danny Davies is struggling with addiction. In this case, his drug was ketamine and it was destroying his body. But the only reason why he turned his life around here is that he saw another man. struggling in the same position as him, but he didn't realize that he could turn his life around, which is why we're here to help you. And this is a quote from him. It's just awful. It destroys your body so fast. And he's referencing the drug faster than any other drug. You can already think you're lonely, and that just makes you even more lonely. It's horrible. And when you just look at this quote, you can see that he's thinking by himself. Internally, he thinks he's alone. He did not realize he needed the help even. But when you talk to other people and listen to other people's stories, that can really help you and your journey to becoming better. So here are some possible solutions. First, we can improve access to help, either with funding or cheaper therapy. Now, these solutions are not only based on what you can do, but what other people can do for you as well. And these solutions are coming in handy. Next, we have addressing the root cause. Try to avoid temptation, peer pressure, or open communication because starting drugs can become very addictive for anyone. Even if you think you're just going to try once because your friends are peer pressuring you, do not fall into that. You can also obviously just say no. And although that's hard, there are some other things we can do if you say yes. We have some coping skills and prevention. First, we have brief counseling, learning healthy ways to cope and recognizing signs. And listening to these types of lectures can offer fast help, but you should, in reality, find more stable solution for so we have policy and community solutions, for example, limiting access to substances, support systems, school screenings, and different state laws. So depending on where you live, there are a lot of different regulations and laws just depending on each school as well. And if your school does not have some of these support systems that you would like, you can find a lot of these online for free. And even with insurance, some helplines are 24/7. For example, you can call the 988 suicide crisis hotline, or you can also just text if calling is too much for you, and they're always available. So you have this at your hands right now, and there's help for you. You can text home to 741-741 to chat with a live crisis counselor. So you're able to talk with someone even if you don't think you need to, or you don't think there's anyone to talk to, because there's always help available. And even if you think you have to find it, it's still there for you. Lastly, substance use in adolescence is heterogeneous, ranging from normative to pathological, and can lead to significant acute and long-term morbidity and mortality. This is a quote from the NIH 2018, and I just want to conclude on a quote because I'll read the rest. Understanding risk and resiliency factors underlying neurobiology and optimal developmentally sensitive interventions is critical in addressing substance-associated problems in adolescence. So basically, what this is saying and why I chose it, because first, understanding is critical. And if we do not understand what is happening in our bodies right now, you don't understand the underlying neurobiology, or just understanding what's happening with your body, it can lead to morbidity and mortality. And obviously, we do not want any of this to happen. And in the end, the conclusion is there has to be an importance of early intervention, because even where you are right now in your journey, the importance is doing it as soon as possible. Then we have a multifaceted approach is needed by parents, school communities, and although not everyone is able to rely on these support systems, in reality, it's not just you, and other people need to step up as well. So if you're watching this and you know someone that is going through struggling through addiction, things like that, then you can obviously support them in any way that you can. Lastly, there is support for you, and we can also significantly reduce risks and help teens make healthy choices. And then these are our sources. You can click on them. You can also find them online on any website. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. I hope this helped and you learned something, and know that there's help for you. If you have any other questions or would like additional information, etc., you can email info.saveoursociety@gmail.com and we'll respond as fast as we can. And that's all. Bye.